In the heart of a luxury restaurant, two men stand on opposite sides of a battlefield. One is a black chef who has poured his blood, sweat, and soul into every dish he creates. The other, the powerful owner, who sees food not as art, but as business. Passion versus profit. Dreams versus numbers. And in this clash, only one vision will decide the future of the restaurant. This is not just about cooking. This is about respect, pride, and survival. The restaurant was glowing that night. Golden chandeliers lit up the velvet walls, glasses clinked softly, and murmurs of wealthy diners filled the air. To the guests, it looked perfect, elegant, calm, flawless. But behind the polished wood and crisp tablecloths, a silent war was brewing. In the kitchen, the black chef stood tall in his spotless white uniform, his head almost touching the low ceiling. His eyes burned with focus as he plated dish after dish, each movement sharp, precise, like a painter working on his masterpiece. To him, food was not just business. It was art, memory, life itself. And then, the owner walked in, a tall man in a gray suit, his shoes polished, his presence demanding attention. He was a man who had built his empire not with spices and flavors, but with numbers and strategy. For him, food was just a product. Customers were not guests, but clients. And clients meant money. "Looks beautiful," the owner said, his voice carrying both approval and sarcasm as he eyed the delicate truffle shavings on the plate. "But tell me, chef, how much did these little luxuries cost me this time?" The chef didn't flinch. He continued plating, his voice calm but firm. "They cost what they needed to. Quality doesn't come cheap." The owner's smile faded. He placed a glass of wine he was holding on the counter and leaned in closer. Quality or arrogance? Customers don't care about rare truffles or imported saffron. They care about being full, about speed, about value for their money. The chef finally looked up, his eyes locking with the owner's. "No, they care about taste, about memory, about experience. They come here because I make them feel something. You sell numbers. I create moments." For a second, silence filled the kitchen. Only the sound of boiling stock pots and sizzling pans broke the tension. The owner straightened his suit jacket and smirked. "Moments don't pay bills, chef. Remember that." And with that, he walked out, leaving the chef staring at the dishes he had poured his soul into. Days passed, and the tension grew heavier. The staff whispered about the growing feud. The waiters didn't know who to side with, the man who paid their salaries, or the man who gave the restaurant its soul. Late one night, long after the last guest had left, the chef remained in the kitchen. He worked silently, experimenting with sauces, testing spices, crafting a dish that could tell his story without words. As he stirred the pot, memories filled his mind. He saw himself as a boy, standing in a small, humble kitchen with his mother. She had taught him to cook not with expensive tools, but with love. She used to say, "Son, food is not about filling stomachs. It's about filling hearts." Her words echoed in his mind as he tasted his creation. The next evening, the restaurant was full again, but this night was different. At one table sat a man whose opinion could make or break their future, a famous food critic, known for his brutal honesty. The staff was nervous. The owner was on edge. In the kitchen, the owner stormed in, his voice sharp. "Serve in the chicken special. Simple, affordable, safe. No experiments tonight." The chef stood firm. "No, he will taste this." He held up the plate he had worked on all night, the dish that carried his story, his mother's words, his entire soul. The owner's face darkened. "If you disobey me, you're finished." But the chef didn't blink. He plated the dish, handed it to the waiter, and walked out of the kitchen. The dining hall fell into silence as the critic took his first bite. Seconds felt like hours. And then, the critic's eyes widened. He put his fork down, leaned back, and smiled. "This is extraordinary. This is not food, it's memory. Whoever cooked this understands life." Applause broke out across the restaurant. Guests looked impressed. The staff beamed with pride, but the owner sat frozen, his pride crushed, his control slipping away. Later, in the quiet of the empty restaurant, the owner confronted the chef. His voice was softer this time, almost tired. You went against me. You humiliated me in front of everyone. The chef stood tall, his voice steady. I didn't do it to humiliate you. I did it because this restaurant deserves more than cheap tricks. People don't remember prices. They remember how they felt when they tasted something real. For the first time, the owner had no answer. His shoulders lowered, his eyes softened. He looked at the chef not as an employee, but as a man who carried truth. Maybe, the owner whispered, maybe you're right. Maybe I've been so busy chasing profits, I forgot why I opened this place in the first place. The two men stood in silence, the weight of their battle hanging in the air. And then, slowly, the owner extended his hand. Let's build this together. Passion and business, side by side. What do you say? The chef looked at the hand, then back at the man. Finally, he nodded and shook it. Deal. But on one condition, never ask me to compromise on taste again. The owner chuckled softly. Fair enough. And so, the restaurant was reborn, not just as a place to eat, but as a place to feel. Guests returned, not because it was cheap or fast, but because it was real. The clash between the black chef and the owner had not destroyed them, it had made them stronger. The applause of that night still echoed in the chef's ears. The critic's words had saved not only his job, but the soul of the restaurant. For the first time, the owner and chef had shaken hands in unity. But peace, as always, was short-lived. New moon symbol and new pressure. Weeks later, business was booming. Tables were booked months in advance. The critics' review had gone viral, turning the restaurant into the hottest spot in the city. But with success came pressure. Investors circled like vultures, offering to buy stakes in the business. The owner was tempted. One late evening, in the office above the dining hall, the owner sat with a group of investors. Your restaurant is hot right now, one of them said, tapping his cigar on the table. But hype fades. You need to expand. Franchises, quick outlets, frozen food lines. That's where the real money is. The owner leaned back, imagining his brand across the country. He could taste the billions. But deep down, he knew the chef would never agree. And he was right. When the chef heard of the plan, his voice thundered across the kitchen. You want to turn this into a fast food chain? Do you know what that means? No soul, no story, no passion, just plastic plates and empty flavor. The owner clenched his jaw. Don't be naive, chef. Do you think emotion alone can carry this place forever? The world moves fast. We either grow or we die. The air between them grew colder. The staff exchanged nervous glances. The storm was back. Fire flashback. The chef's past. That night, unable to sleep, the chef walked through the empty dining hall. The golden lights now looked dim, the chairs lifeless. He thought back to his childhood again. A tiny kitchen. His mother stirring soup on a wood stove. He was just a boy, watching her hands dance over the fire. Why do you spend so much time on one pot, Mama? He had asked. She smiled, tired but gentle. Because every bowl I serve might be the only warm meal someone eats today. If I don't give it my best, what's the point? Her words had been carved into his soul ever since. That was why he cooked the way he did. Not for fame, not for money, for meaning. High voltage sign betrayal in the kitchen. Days later, a secret meeting happened. The owner, desperate to impress the investors, ordered the sous chef to prepare a cheaper, faster menu behind the head chef's back. But the chef found out. He stormed into the kitchen mid-shift, slamming the papers on the counter. What is this? Pre-cooked pasta? Powdered sauces? Frozen fish? His voice roared through the room. The owner stepped forward, face stern. It's cold survival. You're too stubborn to see it. If you won't adapt, I'll find someone who will. The kitchen froze. The staff didn't dare move. The chef's hand shook, not with fear, but with rage. You can fire me if you want. But remember this, people came here because of the soul I put on every plate. Without that, this place is nothing more than brick and wood. He tore off his apron, dropped it on the counter, and walked out. Milky Way the fall. Without the chef, the restaurant quickly changed. Menus became cheaper, faster. At first, profit soared. Investors were thrilled. But slowly, the sparkle faded. Regulars complained that the magic was gone. Reviews turned cold. Average, soulless, just another place. The owner felt it too. Sitting alone in his office one night, he stared at the critic's framed article on the wall. This dish is memory. This dish is life. The words haunted him. For the first time, he realized money had given him power, but not respect. Sunrise, the chef returned. Meanwhile, the chef had opened a small stall on a street corner. No chandeliers, no velvet chairs, just a grill, a few pots, and his recipes. But people came. Word spread fast. Soon, lines formed around the block. Journalists covered the story of the street chef who beat five-star restaurants. The owner couldn't ignore it anymore. One evening, he visited the stall himself. The smell hit him before he even reached the counter. Rich, warm, alive. And there was a chef, sweating under the streetlight, smiling as he served bowls of stew. The owner stepped forward quietly. Still cooking like it's art, I see. The chef didn't look up. And you? Still selling food like it's furniture. For a moment, silence. Then, the owner sighed. His voice softened. I was wrong. About everything. The investors, the shortcuts. I lost the heart of the restaurant. I lost respect. The chef finally met his eyes. Respect isn't something you buy. It's something you earn, plate by plate. The owner nodded slowly. Then help me earn it back. Glowing started to be continued, and so the battle was not over. The chef agreed to return, but on his terms. The restaurant would be rebuilt, not as a chain, not as a factory, but as a temple of true flavor. Yet, deep down, both men knew the road ahead would not be easy. New challenges awaited, rival chefs, greedy investors, personal sacrifices. The story of the black chef and the owner had only just begun. The restaurant seemed alive again, but the truce between the chef and the owner was fragile. Though they had shaken hands, an invisible wall still stood between them. Success had returned after critics' review, and every table was filled. Yet in the quiet moments, both men knew the storm had only calmed, not ended. The chef still guarded his kitchen like a lion protects his den, and the owner still counted numbers with restless eyes. Soon, new pressures came. Wealthy investors approached the owner with promises of expansion. They spoke of franchises, frozen meals, quick-service versions of the restaurants scattered across the city. To the investors, it was a golden opportunity. To the owner, it was a chance to leave behind a legacy of wealth and dominance. But he also knew the chef would resist. For the chef, food was not something to be mass-produced. Every dish was sacred, every plate a story. The clash came sooner than expected. One evening, the chef discovered a hidden stack of papers, new menus drafted without his knowledge, filled with shortcuts and cheaper ingredients. His heart sank, then burned with rage. That night, in front of the entire staff, he confronted the owner. Their voices rose, echoing through the kitchen. The chef accused him of betraying the very soul of the restaurant, while the owner argued for survival in a brutal business world. In the end, the chef tore off his apron and walked out, leaving the restaurant and its glittering lights behind. Without him, the restaurant quickly lost its charm. Customers noticed a difference, even if they couldn't explain it. The dishes looked fine, the service was fast, but something was missing, something invisible yet undeniable. Reviews grew colder, and regulars began to drift away. The owner tried to convince himself that profits mattered more, but each night as he sat alone in his office, the silence grew heavier, and the framed article from the critic stared back at him like a reminder of his failure. Meanwhile, the chef had not given up. With nothing but his passion and a few savings, he set up a small food stall on a busy street corner. There were no chandeliers, no velvet chairs, just simple wooden benches, a grill, and a pot of stew that carried the taste of his memories. At first, only a few people stopped by, curious. But word spread quickly, and soon crowds gathered. Journalists began to write about him, calling him the street chef who outshone the five-star giants. The aroma of his food reached farther than the walls of any restaurant could contain. The owner could no longer ignore it. One evening, dressed not in his usual suit but in something simpler, he went to the stall. The smell of the stew wrapped around him, rich and alive. He stood in the line like everyone else, waiting silently until it was his turn. When the chef finally noticed him, their eyes locked. There was no anger in the chef's face now, only a quiet strength. The owner admitted softly that he had been wrong, that chasing numbers had made him blind, that he had lost respect even for himself. For a long moment, the chef said nothing. Then, slowly, he nodded, reminding him that respect is not bought with money but earned with honesty, plate by plate. That night, the two men spoke under the dim glow of the streetlight. The owner asked the chef to return, not as an employee, but as a partner. The chef agreed on one condition, that no compromise would ever again be made on taste or quality. The owner, tired of his battles with greed, accepted. But both of them knew the journey ahead would not be easy. Investors would not step aside quietly. Rivals in the city had already started plotting to steal the spotlight. And success, once regained, would only bring newer, sharper challenges. The story was far from over. In truth, it had only just begun. The clash of passion and profit would continue, not just in their restaurant, but in every decision they made, every challenge they faced. The fire in the kitchen was still burning, and the world outside was watching. Their future would be written not in contracts or menus, but in every dish served to those who came seeking not just food, but something greater. The partnership between the chef and the owner was reborn, but it was not without scars. Though they now stood side by side, trust was fragile. Every decision carried weight. Every small disagreement threatened to ignite the same fire that had once torn them apart. Yet, the restaurant began to breathe again. Customers returned, drawn by the soul that had returned to the dishes. The critics who once doubted them wrote again, this time praising the balance between passion and elegance. But with success came envy. Across town, rival restaurateurs watched closely. One man in particular, a former colleague of the chef, now turned competitor, saw the rising fame as a threat to his own empire. His name was Marcus, a chef known not for authenticity, but for theatrics. He cared little for the soul of food. Instead, he thrived on spectacle, showmanship, and shallow praise. His restaurants were glamorous, his advertising loud, his image polished. Yet deep inside, Marcus envied the black chef's ability to touch hearts with simplicity. One evening, Marcus himself visited the restaurant. He dined quietly, watching the chef move through the kitchen with calm authority. The flavors on his plate cut deeper than he expected, stirring old memories of when he too had once cooked with passion. But jealousy swallowed any admiration. As he left, he leaned close to the owner and said with a smirk, "Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts. Fame doesn't stay forever. When it fades, I'll be here to take what's left." The words unsettled the owner. He had already faced the weight of investors pressing him to expand, and now he feared competition might crush them if they didn't grow quickly enough. The chef, however, was unmoved. "Let him do what he wants. Our food speaks for itself," he said. Yet even he felt the pressure tightening around his chest. Weeks turned into months, and the restaurant's name grew brighter. Journalists hailed the chef as a visionary, the man who cooks with memory. But Marcus was not idle. He began spreading rumors, paying critics to tarnish the reputation of his rival. He mocked the idea of soulful cooking as outdated, calling it a fairy tale in interviews. Slowly, whispers of doubt crept into the city. Some customers began to ask, was the restaurant truly special, or was it just hype? One night, disaster struck. A wealthy investor who had been denied influence in the restaurant launched a smear campaign, accusing the chef of stealing recipes and the owner of financial fraud. The news spread fast. Reporters crowded the street outside, cameras flashing, customers canceling reservations. The once busy dining hall stood nearly empty. Inside, the chef sat in silence, his hands clenched. The owner paced the floor, his nerves unraveling. "This will ruin us," he muttered. "We'll lose everything." The chef finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "We will not lose. Not if we remember why we started. Food heals. Food speaks. Let me show them the truth." And so, he planned something daring. Instead of fighting back with words, lawsuits, or advertisements, he decided to cook one massive public feast in the heart of the city. No tickets, no reservations, no profit. Just food, served freely to anyone who came. The owner thought it madness, But in his heart, he knew it was the only way to remind people of the truth. On the day of the feast, hundreds gathered in the square. The chef worked tirelessly, his hands moving with the rhythm of memory. Pot after pot, dish after dish, he served them with stories. "This stew," he told a child, "was my mother's gift to me when we had nothing. This bread," he said to an old man, "is from a recipe that carried families through hard winters." His words carried more than flavor. They carried soul. And as people ate, silence fell, followed by smiles, followed by tears. Reporters who had come to cover a scandal instead wrote of a miracle. The chef who gave food, not for money, but for meaning. One headline read the next day: "The smear campaign collapsed under the weight of truth." The restaurant's reputation rose higher than ever, not because of luxury, but because of authenticity. But Marcus was furious. Watching from the shadows, he clenched his fists. He had underestimated his rival once, and he would not make that mistake again. He vowed to destroy the chef, not with words, but with action. He announced a grand event, a cooking competition, televised across the city, where he would challenge a black chef directly. The winner would claim the crown of the city's greatest culinary master. The owner was hesitant. "This is a trap," he warned. "Marcus plays dirty. He'll twist the game." But the chef simply nodded, his eyes steady. "I don't fear him, because I don't cook for crowns. I cook for people, and people know the truth when they taste it." The stage was set for a battle larger than any they had faced before. Rivalries burned, investors schemed, reputations trembled. Yet in the chef's heart, there was only the quiet echo of his mother's voice. Food is not about filling stomachs. It's about filling hearts. The story was far from over. In fact, it was only beginning. The feast had proven his spirit, but the competition ahead would test not only his skills, but his soul, his patience, and his belief in what food truly means.